Hello class. So in this video, I want to be looking at sections 6.5 and 6.6. Section 6.5 is about the quadratic formula. Now we've looked at how to solve quadratic equations with the AC method, and now we want to look at using the quadratic formula. Remember that with the quadratic formula, you can use it for any quadratic equation, to solve any quadratic equation. Now, the formula is over here. Remember that to use this formula, you have to know your A, you have to know your B, you have to know your C. And then you have to make sure that you remember the formula as well. Now, how do we apply this formula? Let's look at some problems. I'm going to go to problem 26. Again, this is a media example, so you can go to the media lessons and then watch the video. Now, in this problem, we have negative x squared plus 3x plus 10 equals 0. First of all, I have to find my A, B, and C. My A is negative 1 because I'm comparing it to the general form. So A is negative 1, B is 3, and then C is 10. So my x is going to be equal to minus B, which is minus 3, plus or minus B squared, which is 3 squared, minus 4 AC. And A is negative 1, and C is 10. Divided by 2A. What is 2A? 2 times negative 1. Okay? So, this should be equal to negative 3 plus or minus. I'm going to go underneath the square root and then work those out. So I have 9. Now, I have negative 4 times negative 1, which is 4, times 10, which is 40. All over negative 2. Now this should give me negative 3 plus or minus square root of 49 all over negative 2. Now we do know that the square root of 49 is 7 all over negative 2. So we're going to have two solutions for this. We have negative 3 plus 7 all over negative 2, or negative 3 minus 7 all over negative 2. So negative 3 plus 7 is positive 4 over negative 2. Here we have negative 10 over negative 2. So my x is going to be, here I have negative 2. So x equals negative 2. Let me do that. X equals negative 2, or x equals positive 5. Or x equals positive 5. Okay? So that is applying the quadratic formula. Let's look at another one. So we can look at B. Now for b, you have 2x squared minus 4x equals 3. You could rewrite this as 2x squared minus 4x. Now if you do a minus 3 on both sides, you're going to have minus 3 equals 0. So again, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So a is 2, b is negative 4, c is negative 3. So my quadratic formula, x is equal to negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So x equals negative b, which is negative 4 plus or minus. B squared is going to be negative 4 squared minus 4. A is 2, C is negative 3, all over 2 times A, which is 2. So x will be equal to, now, negative times negative is positive, so I have 4 plus or minus. Now, in here, we have negative 4 times negative 4, which is 16. And then here, we have negative 4 times 2, which is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 3, which is positive 24, all over 4. Now, what is this going to give us? It's going to give us 4 plus or minus square root of 40, all over 4. So my x will be equal to 4 plus square root of 40, all over 4, or x will be equal to 4 minus square root of 40, all over 4. So what you should do now, of course, is go into your calculator and then making sure that you put this in your calculator. And in the end, I want to check to make sure that I give you the answers to that. So you should have a calculator. So we have square root of 40. The square root of 40 is 6.3246 plus 4 divided by 4. So this should give me 2 points. I'm going to do 3 decimal places. 581. And then for this one, x, for the next one, x equals, so I'm going to go back and do square root of 40. 4 minus square root of 40. Divided by 4. So we're going to have negative 0.581. So these are the two answers we're going to have. Okay? All right. Now, in problem 27, this is a U-try problem. So I'm going to do that also. So it says solve 3x squared equals 7x plus 20 using the quadratic formula. Show all steps and simplify your answer. It says verify what you get, your answer by graphing as well. And then sketch the graph on a good viewing window. The vertex, the vertical intercept, and any horizontal intercept should appear on the screen. Okay, so let's do that. So 3x squared equals 7x plus 20. I know that if I subtract 7x here and I subtract 20, I have to do the same thing here. So I have minus 7x and then I subtract 20 and then it's going to equal 0. So A is 3, B is negative 7, C is negative 20. Now my quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So my b is negative 7, so I have negative 7 plus or minus b squared. I have negative 7 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, and then c is negative 20 all over 2a, which is 2 times 3, or 6. All right. So we are going to have negative 7 times negative 7. Negative times negative 7 is positive. So 7 plus or minus. Negative 7 times negative 7 is going to be 49. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 times negative 20 is going to give us positive 240 all over 6. So this should give us 7 plus or minus square root of 289 all over 6. So that's what we have at this point. So with this, we're going to have x to be equal to 7 plus or minus square root of 289 all over 6. Okay? All right. And then the square root of 289, we know that it's 17. So we have 7 plus or minus 17 over 6. So we have two options. It's either x is equal to 7 plus 17 over 6, or x is equal to 7 minus 17 over 6. So x equals 24 over 6, or x equals negative 10 over 6. So those are from the two options. So 24 divided by 6 is 4, or this will give us that x equals negative 5 over 3. And that's it. We've solved this quadratic equation. Now, it says we should verify our answer by graphing, so I'm going to go to the graphing calculator. So, let's see. So, on the graphing calculator, I've got to put in my values. So, my y is going to be, let me check again. It's 3x. So this is a problem where you could use what we've already fixed, 3x squared minus 7x minus 20 equals 0. You can use that. So if I decide to use that, I'm going to have 3x squared minus 7x minus 20, and then my y2 is 0. Remember, you have to put y2. Now, with my y-intercept, I know that I have to try to, at least I'm going to start from increasing my y values. I'm just going to do that and see what I get for my window. Oops. I'm going to graph. Oh yeah, that's nice. So I want to verify my answers. So I'm going to do second calc. Then you do 5. I'm going to move this closer and then hit enter, enter, enter. 1.667. I mean, what is negative 1.667? It's negative 5 over 3. Put that in the calculator and then you see it's the same thing. Okay? It's negative 5 over 3. Now, what about the other one? This one. So I do second calc 5. And I'm going to move the cursor to my right. And then I'm going to do enter, enter, enter. Yes, and then I've got x equals 4. And that's exactly what I got. That's exactly what I got. Okay? That's exactly what I got. So I'm going to draw the graph and then put everything in there. Now remember that going back to the graph, going back to the workbook. I'm going back to the workbook. It tells us to label, right? It tells us to label. So you want to draw the graph and label the graph. And make sure that you show the x-intercept, okay? The x-intercept. And remember that our x-intercept is, I think we had 4 and 0, and then negative 5 over 3 and 0 for our x-intercepts. Okay, so you label that on the graph. And then you show your window, label your window. So I did 25, then negative 25, negative 10, then positive 10. But again, it depends on you and what you want to do. And make sure that you know your y-intercept, right? My y-intercept, if I put 0 in for that, 3x squared minus 7x minus 20. If I put 0 in for x, this goes to 0, that goes to 0. So my y-intercept is x is 0, y is negative 20. So you have that as well, okay? All right. Yeah. All right. Now I'm going to move on to the next section, the last section, and which is complex numbers. Remember how in lesson 5 we did say that sometimes when you are finding your x-intercepts, when you go to the calculator, you will see that the graph does not cross the x-axis, or it doesn't cut the x-axis, right? And we said that when that happens, you have no real number solutions. No real number solutions. But this means that you have complex number solutions. So let's talk about complex numbers. We just want to introduce it so that we know what complex numbers are. Now, let's say that we have an equation, and I'm going to go to the whiteboard. Let's say that we have an equation, x squared equals negative 1. Now, we could do a plus 1 and plus 1 here, and this gives us x squared plus 1 equals 0, right? So it's the same thing. Now, if you're trying to solve for x, in the end, what you are going to be doing is that you have to go back to that. X squared equals negative 1. Now, if you put a square root here and then a square root there, you're going to have x equals the square root of negative 1. Now, if you go to your calculator and then you decide to put in square root of negative 1, oh yeah, you see that? It says, no, there is a problem. We have a non-real answer. So right here is telling us that this is not a real solution, a real number. So this brings us to what is called complex numbers. Complex numbers. Okay? So what complex numbers do, or what we are going to do here, is that anytime you get to this point where you have the square root of a negative 1, we are going to say that square root of negative 1 is equal to I. Okay? Good? All right. So it's equal to I. So here we're going to say x equals to I. X equals to I. Now, with this definition for this, we could say x equals positive I, or x equals negative I, right? Because of the square root, plus or minus. That's what we are saying. So we are going to provide a general form of complex numbers. Now, for complex numbers, what we are going to say is that complex numbers should always be in this form. A plus B I. Now, what is I again? Square root of -1. A plus B I. This is a standard form of a complex number. A standard form of a complex number, okay? All right. So let's say that in problem 28, there we have the solutions, but I'm going to go over these real quick. Let's say that you have square root of -9. And you're supposed to solve. Now, if you put this in a calculator, you're going to get an error. So how do we deal with this? Now, -9, the square root of -9, I can rewrite this as 9 times -1. Remember, 9 times -1 is -9. All of these are under the square root, so I'm not changing a thing. Now, this can be written as that. Oops. This we can write it as 9 -1. See that? Again, I've not changed a thing. The square root has affected both numbers, right? Now, the square root of 9 is 3 times square root of -1. I can rewrite this as 3 then square root of -1, which will give me 3i, because I is square root of -9. So really, the square root of -9 is 3i. It's 3i. Now, if this happens, remember, it means that if you're going back to the general form, then what we are saying is that A is 0 plus B is 3i. That's what we're saying. A is 0. Okay? Now, let's look at C. Now, for C, you have 3 plus square root of -49. So let's say you're solving a quadratic and you get to this point. So what do? Now, because you have a square root of -49, you know you're getting a complex number situation. So this, I can rewrite this as 3 plus square root of 49 times -1 all over 2. And this can give me 3 plus square root of 49 times square root of -1 all over 2. This is going to give me 3 plus square root of 49 is 7, I all over 2. And that's it. That's it, pretty much. Or you could rewrite this as 3 over 2 plus 7 over 2i. Same thing. Remember, it's got the same denominator, right? So adding them will bring you back to that. So that is complex numbers, okay? All right. So this tells me that anytime, for instance, if you go to problem 29 in your workbook, where you have 2x squared, I'm going to switch back to that, where you have 2x squared plus x plus 1 equals 0. Now, go to your calculator and you put it in. This is what you're going to get. Now, you would see that the graph does not cut the x-axis, or it doesn't cross the x-axis. So you know that you're getting case 3, which is a complex number situation. No real number solutions. No real number solutions. Now, to find the solutions, we're going to use the quadratic formula. Now, when you use the quadratic formula with your A to be 2, B is 1, C is 1, now put it in, this is what you're going to get. And it's going to bring you to this point here. -1 plus or minus square root of -7 divided by 4. So you're going to have x1 equals to that or that. Now the problem is the square root of -7, so we have to fix it. And then if we are fixing square root of -7, we are going to have square root of negative, 1 times 7, right? Now I can bring square root of 7 out times square root of -1. So this gives me square root of 7i. Okay? So I square root of 7. And that is what brought us here to this end. Okay? All right. So follow this and then I think you'll get what is going on here. Now, what about this one? So it says solve by graphing. So we're going to do that. We're going to solve by graphing. Okay. So x squared plus 3x minus 7 equals 3. So this can be my y1 and this can be my y2. Or, yeah, so I'll put that, I'll put it in the calculator like that. Or I'm going to move the 3 to the left and then have 0 for y2. You could, any of them, you get the same thing, right? Remember here you are solving the quadratic equation. So you are not finding the x-intercept where y2 should be 0. So I'm going to go to my calculator. Oops. And then I'm going to do y equals, 1. And then do y equals, I'm going to erase this. And then I'm going to put in what I have. So my y1, I'm going to do x squared plus 3x minus 7. I think it's a minus 7. And then remember, my y2 is going to be 3. I'm going to try to use a standard Windows Zoom 6. So there's what I have. Now, this red line here is y2 equals 3, right? So it cuts, or the graph cuts it here. So that is where the concentration is, not on the x-axis, because y2 is 3. So if I do second, trace, 5, I'm going to move it closer to the first one, which is this one. So enter, enter, enter. So my x is 2 when y2 is 3, or y is 3. So x is 2 for the first one. So x equals 2. What about this one, the second one? So I'm going to move, I'm going to do second, trace, 5. Then I'm going to move the cursor to my left. Oops. I'm going to bring it back down a little bit. So enter, enter, enter. So x is what? -5. Okay. So that's it. I've got my x values. I've solved the quadratic equation with my calculator. Now, what about those of you who would like to use y2 to be 0? Now, remember the equation was x squared plus 3x minus 7 equals 3. So if you do a -3 minus 3, this will go to 0. And then you have x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. So this is your y2, this is your y1, right? This whole thing is your y1. You could also do that. So I'm going to do that and then show you so you see the difference. So here I'm going to change this to minus what, 10? Yeah. And then my y2 is 0. Do not forget that. So you go to graph. So this is what I have. If I want to see everything here, I have to change my window, but I don't really need that for now. I'm just trying to find my, okay, let me just do that. So for the sake of understanding, so my negative y, I'm going to do negative 15. I think that should be fine. Yes, now it's better. Now you would see that the red line is on the x-axis. Why? Because y2 is 0. And y equals 0 is the x-axis. Okay, that's why. So second, trace, 5. I'm going to move this closer. Enter. I mean, you could see that you're going to get a 2. Yep, x equals 2. And that is this first one. What about the second one? I'm going to move this. Oops. Okay. So I'm going to do second, trace, 5. And then I'm going to move this. And then I do enter, enter, enter. And I have negative 5. But again, y is 0. Why? Because now we are dealing with the x-axis where y is 0. And that's all you do, okay? So you have two options. All right. Now it says solve by factoring too. So solve by factoring. And then the second one says solve by using the quadratic formula. So I'm going to solve by factoring. Remember, I have 3x squared. I forgot the function. I'm going to go up to find that. So 3x squared, x squared, sorry, plus 3x minus 7 equals 3x squared plus 3x minus 7. So I'm going to erase that. X squared plus 3x minus 7 equals 3. So again, I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides. I'm going to have x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. So my AC method, now remember, A is 1, right? A is 1. So A times C is going to be negative 10. I need two numbers that would multiply to give me that. And then I have 3. The same two numbers should give me that. So what am I going to have? I'm going to have, what are the two numbers? I think it's going to be 5 and negative 2, right? 5 and negative 2. Oh yeah, so I'm going to do, replace this with 5x minus 2x. Again, you could switch it. You could do 3 negative 2 plus 5 is the same thing, right? It's the same thing. It doesn't matter. You could switch it. So if I do negative 2x plus 5x, what matters is that these two should give you 3x minus 10 equals 0. Now I'm going to have these two and then those two. So what is common between x squared minus 2x is x minus 2 plus 5. What is common again is 5. So x minus 2 equals 0. Remember, these two should always be the same. And because they are the same, I'm going to bring that out because that is common. And then I have x plus 5 equals 0. So I have two options now. Oops. Yeah. So I have two options. Come on. Erase. I have two options now. Remember that I have this to be equal to 0. So x minus 2 equals 0, or x plus 5 equals 0. So x minus 2 equals 0 is x equals 2, and this is x equals negative 5. Is that what we got? Yes, that is what we got from the calculator. That's what we got from the calculator. All right, what about the last one? Using the quadratic formula. What about that? Oops. What about using the quadratic formula? So when you use the quadratic formula, I'm going to write the quadratic formula. X equals negative b, so minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, our function is that plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. So a is 1, b is 3, c is negative 10. So my b is 3, so I have negative 3 plus or minus. B squared is 3 squared minus 4. A is 1, c is negative 10 divided by 2 times 1. So I have negative 3 plus or minus square root of 9. 3 squared is 9. Now negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times negative 10 is positive 49. I mean positive 40 all over 2. So this should give me negative 3 plus or minus square root of 49 over 2. This should give me negative 3 plus or minus 7 all over 2. Oh yeah. So at this point, I know that I'm going to change this to a blue. I'm going to have x equals negative 3 plus 7 over 2, or x equals negative 3 minus 7 over 2. So I'm going to have x equals 4 over 2, or x equals negative 10 over 2. X equals 4 divided by 2 is 2. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. Is that what we got? Yes. X equals 2 and x equals negative 5. So this is our lesson 6.5 and 6.6. Remember, you do have the media lessons as well. You do have the media lessons or media examples as well. And you could always watch that too. Okay, I'm going to show you. Maybe you still don't know where to find those. When you get into the folder, for lesson 6, and how do you even get into the folder if you don't know? So when you come here, you scroll down, down, down. I know there are lots of announcements on top. You go to 6, you choose that, and then you come to media examples. Oh yeah, you've got square root practice. Okay, and then you've got square root practice again. This is before quadratic formula, and this is another square root practice. So you could always, practice with all these. Look at that, you've got a lot here. Okay, and then you have that as well. Okay, yep, so you have this. Really? I think I did all of them. Wow, I'm the best student ever. I did all of them. So you could practice that as well. So send your questions to me, and thank you. Bye.